This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Confessions of a Military Spouse, where we dig deep and talk about the unspoken hard truths of what it's really like to be a military spouse. A new show comes out bi-weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Confessions of a Military Spouse. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
Abby Wambach has saved the USA's life in this World Cup! Hall, the runner! Loose ball! It's good! Gonzaga! The slipper still fits!
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag! It gets through Buckner! Here comes Knight and the Mets win it! He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth!
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people.
You are a factory of sadness! I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
You may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
And happy Friday to you, Matt Coyne, alongside Jake Holmes. Jake, how you doing this week?
Man, it was fun talking to Max last week, but it's good to be back with you this week. Matt, how are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm always sad. I feel terrible. I've missed 2 the last 3 weeks, but family matters call. It's we had both girls down sick, and then my wife was down sick, and sometimes the dad and the husband duties just have to take priority.
Oh, of course they do. I mean, I don't know what that's like, but I mean, I can definitely understand where you're coming from, my friend.
Yeah. So it's great to be back. Thanks to Max for filling in last week on very short notice. So thanks to him, and Jake, thank you for putting up with that last minute change. I hope you all enjoyed the show last week. Before we get into this week, I want to remind you that we are presented by Squadcast.fm, presented on the Public House Media Network. You can listen to us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, anywhere you can get your podcasts. Make sure you catch us on there. Learn more about us at publichousemedia.org and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Be sure to visit our daily poll question on the Cheap Seats Facebook page after each show. This show, if you are not familiar, comes out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays with Christian and Jonathan, Wednesdays with Max and Tanner, and then Friday with yours truly and Jake Holmes. Jake, I guess there's a big game coming up here in a couple days, huh?
What game are you talking about?
Well, the Saints and Patriots. Oh, wait.
No.
I said I wouldn't do it, and I did it. I won't get into it. That's not what we're going to do today. We've had a lot of fun here on the show this week talking about just different aspects of the Super Bowl. And today, Jake and I wanted to talk to you about we're going to talk about the commercials, and we have some fun facts for you. We figured we would throw those out for you. And just for you, Jake, I feel like this is that show, well, the fun facts part of it, where if you're listening, you write this stuff down, and then when you're sitting there during the Sunday during the game, you can say, hey, did you know that this happened? And then you don't have to give us the credit. We'll just give it to you. Jake, that sounds like a good idea, right?
I think it sounds like a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I think, you can come off knowing some stupid fun facts. But before we get into that, like I said, we are going to talk about the commercials. Jake, the Super Bowl commercials, in us kind of coming up with this, do you know how and why the commercials got so big, other than it's just a very, one of the most watched things of the year? Have you ever heard of a reason why Super Bowl commercials have just become really a part of Super Bowl Sunday?
Well, Super Bowl commercials themselves, just the idea of them, are so interesting because you know that this is one of the most watched events of the entire year. So, companies are, of course, going to just go all out to, try to impress. I don't know what the origination, like how it all originated, though. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because, there's been some good ones over the years. There's been some bad ones over the years, obviously. But, people watch the game just for commercials. And if you think about it, what an oxymoron. How many people – Jake, do you turn on do you turn on, I don't know, FX movies and turn on a movie to watch it for the commercials?
It's you know what? It's unique. I was just thinking the same thing. It's like you tune into the biggest game of the year, the biggest football game of the year, with two best teams, the winner goes down in, history, all that. And some people watch them for the commercials.
Yeah,
some people watch this event for the commercials. It's unlike anything that I think it's really unlike any other event or TV show, anything like that, throughout the entire year.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're gonna throw some fun facts out here during this part of it. Man, Jake, we're setting everybody up just to be absolute just geniuses on Sunday. But this year, CBS is charging $5.25 million for a 30-second commercial. That is just ridiculous. That's $175,000 per second. That's insane to me.
Yeah, what's funny is my buddy actually today at work came up to me and he said, "Hey Jake, how much do you think that it would cost to have a commercial air at the Super Bowl this year?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, I don't know." I was thinking about past experiences when people asked me that question, and I was like, "Oh, $1 million." And it was like, "Nope, you're not even close, brother." $5.25 million. That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
for 30 seconds. That's
and these businesses, I work some with sponsors and getting people involved with different events that we do, conferences, stuff like that. And and I look at it, I'm like, oh, these companies are helping us out. Like, hey, thanks for being a sponsor or whatever that is. And I'm like, it's clearly they see value in this for a company to spend $5.25 million, which is up $1 million from 2014. The average 30-second commercial in 2008 cost $2.69 million. Jake, in 1967, the commercials estimated $37,000 to $42,000, which is pretty crazy. So, and especially the Super Bowls weren't even really watched then. I don't know if that's in today's numbers or not. I feel like that's a lot of money in '67 for a game that wasn't watched. But so, Jake, before we get into this, what were some of your favorite commercials over the past years? Like something, just one that a couple that stick out to you.
Well, of course, I'm obviously an animal lover. Anybody that listens to the show knows that my dog Sydney is like my child.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the Budweiser Clydesdale commercials.
Yeah,
I'm always a big fan of them. But there was one, I believe it was aired Super Bowl 50, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember what car it was, but I remember it struck me as for lack of better term, cute.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Star Wars. It was like Star Wars theme. As a little kid, that was like
it was a Volkswagen. One of my favorite. Yep, one of my favorite as well.
There was something about that commercial where I was like, you know what, that's a really good commercial. I couldn't remember. I knew that it was like a luxury car, a luxury vehicle. I couldn't remember if it was like BMW, Volkswagen, whatever. But I remember thinking I was like, that is a solid commercial, and it's funny and it's cute at the same time. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree. I actually show that on. I do videos starting whenever we have youth group and stuff, and I've shown that before. It's so you're right. Some of these commercials. I'm like, what were you thinking? There's kids watching this, right? and some of these commercials are just. One thing though, you brought up the Budweiser Clydesdales. You got to think go back to the mid 90s, maybe even late, I don't know, not even the 2000s, early 2000s with the Budweiser frogs, with Budweiser. You got that one. Now they have the little puppy. I don't know who the marketing people are at Budweiser, but I mean, bravo, because I think if you make a list of the top 25, and we were saying off the air that you all know who listen to the Friday show, we love drafts, and you're probably like, why aren't you doing the commercial draft? There's just too many. But I bet if you make a list of the top 25, 50, there's going to be a lot of Budweiser commercials on there.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. No, yeah. Definitely agree with you. But yeah, you mentioned earlier about, there's kids watching. I remember when I was 10 years old, I was so amped for the Steelers Seahawks, of course. It was my first time. It was my first time seeing the Steelers in the Super Bowl. It wouldn't have been yours, I don't believe. Probably Super Bowl.
Yeah, I watched them at 90.
Neil O'Donnell, the Neil O'Donnell disaster.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my first time ever seeing them in the Super Bowl, and there was GoDaddy commercials.
Oh, yeah.
And I was 10 years old, and I was watching the game with my mother. And I was like, you realize that there are 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, at the time I wasn't necessarily thinking this, but I mean,
you're like,
now
this
15
is fantastic.
15 years later, I'm thinking, you know what? I was 10 years old, and were many, many young Steeler and Seahawks fans watching that game. Not even just limited to those two teams. Watching that game and seeing those.
Yeah. Well, and GoDaddy, I remember, was under a lot of fire because they were really that first, whoa, remember they had the nerd makeout scene. I forget what year that was. And, speaking of Budweiser, I'm looking through some commercials. I forgot about their real-life Pac-Man from 2015.
Yeah.
That was a really fun one. And then, talking about kids in 2015 as well, remember the Nationwide Insurance commercial when they used the dead kids?
Oh, my gosh.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
I was sitting there. I remember looking over at the people who were I'm like, is this legit happening right now? Is this real? And I remember the next day, everyone's like, well, thanks a lot, Nationwide. I mean, you could have, used Peyton Manning or something like that. But, oh, my gosh. But, well, speaking of animals too, of course, Sydney is a big part of your life. Sydney, I'm sure, is a big football fan. Will she be watching the Puppy Bowl this Sunday?
So what's funny about Sid is and people think I'm crazy, but on Instagram, I quite often I film her making her picks. I put
and
a
she's
treat,
very accurate, accurate.
She's very accurate. She's almost 3 years old. 29 in dog years. It kills me. But she's 14-3. She's 14-3. She will be watching the Super Bowl. She will be watching the Puppy Bowl. And she's very excited. She's very excited for the whole thing.
Yeah. That's the most important. I mean, the Puppy Bowl, then of course you got Hallmark trying to equal with the Kitten Bowl. I mean, come on. That's enough. But this is the 15th year for the Puppy Bowl. That's crazy to me.
That's wild.
Yeah, so, I mean, a few other commercials. I mean, like I said, of course, that one was bad. The Volkswagen one, so many people loved. And this year, there's some sneak peeks of what's coming out. They always have the leak. And, Jake, can I be honest with you? I heard one particular one that was leaked that's coming out that I hope is going to be in the first quarter, because I don't know how much of this game I'll watch depending on what happens. But the Toy Story 4 trailer will be shown during the Super Bowl. It's been confirmed. It's not a rumor. It's happening.
So you know what? I mean, you know me, Matt, and I love movies. How are they going to do this? How are they going to make Toy Story 4? I thought it was done.
Oh no. So what happened was at the end of Toy Story 3, remember Andy gives the toys to Bonnie. And people out there are like, why does this guy in his 30s know this? I got two little girls, so that's why. But he gives the toys to Bonnie, and then they've actually made 2 shorts with her, the Toy Story of Terror, and then there's another one that they made. I can't think of what it's called, but Bonnie is in it, this little girl. So I'm guessing Toy Story 4 is going to have Bonnie instead of Andy. But Tim Allen also was on, I forget what talk show it was, but he said, he goes, I can't give anything away, but the last scene, he said, I looked behind me at the producers, and I said, you can't do this. He said, nobody could get through the last scene. So there may be a man in his mid-30s crying in the middle of the movie theater at the end of Toy Story 4. I'm just going to throw that out there.
And I'll tell you honestly, and this is pretty. I'm pretty sure of this. You're going to have a man in his mid-20s, crying in the movie theater once he sees the Lion King real-life adaptation.
Yeah, what about that?
Yeah, and I saw also that the Dumbo adaptation is going to be aired during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's rumored, as well as the Aladdin, real-life Aladdin too. So
yeah, oh my gosh,
Disney, right there. So that's how crazy this is. So I'm looking through some of the rumored and actual what's going to be played. Jake, this is crazy. Out of these movies, these 5 movies, so I'm sorry. So Toy Story 4 is confirmed. That is Disney. Avengers, the Endgame, that's rumored. Disney. Aladdin, Disney. Dumbo, Disney. So right there, they spent $21 million if all 4 of those are shown.
Unbelievable. That's not even like in the big 6 media companies. The Super Bowl's not on ABC. That's not Disney and ESPN. This is CBS.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So it's literally $21 million that they could potentially be dropping in this. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing how much commercials just have become part of this. And is there any other commercials that, there's, like we said, again, there's just so many, but McDonald's, I'm looking, they've had some good ones. Again, the Budweiser frogs. I don't remember this one. 2007, this is considered one of the worst ones, from GameSpot.com. The GM robot commits suicide. I don't remember that one in 2007.
2007, what would the Super Bowl have been? That would have been Patriots Giants. Oh, I remember. I was too enthralled in the game, I believe. No, that would have been Colts Bears. That would have been Super Bowl 41.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what's crazy is I remember that game was terrible, and I don't remember too much of the entire thing. I remember Devin Hester taking the opening kick for a touchdown, but final score I believe was 29-14. The game wasn't that entertaining.
Yeah.
So I didn't really pay attention to the commercials either. I guess I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting to see. Another one I'm looking at. Well, I'm sorry. Go back to that. Yes, watch that because it's in. What I meant by it's interesting to see is I'm interested to see what it was because I don't remember it at all. But also I'm looking here. Hobbs and Shaw is also confirmed, which is the spinoff of Fast and Furious. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But well, I feel like we just talked about commercials for 20 minutes.
But first, let me take a selfie.
What the heck is going
Welcome
on?
to America.
When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more interesting stuff about fun facts so you can be smart at your Super Bowl party. Stay with Jake and Matt here in the Cheap Seats. We'll be right back.
Let me take a selfie.
This is Bryce Burge, host of Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. After this episode, come join us on a trip around the soccer world as we discuss club and country every Tuesday. Stamp your soccer passport by subscribing on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your Public House Media podcasts. And thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? I'm Christian Heimel.
And I'm John Lauder.
We host the Monday edition of The Cheap Seats presented by Squadcast.fm.
Join us every week as we recap the biggest headlines from the past weekend in sports.
We'll also preview the upcoming week so you know what to talk about around the water cooler.
Plus, whether it's good or bad, we're handing out some vibes in our Mojo Monday segment.
Don't forget to vote on our poll question on Facebook at The Cheap Seats by Public House Media.
And please subscribe to The Cheap Seats on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more so you never miss a moment.
A new episode comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but you can only catch John and I on Mondays way up here in the cheap seats, presented by Squadcast.fm.
On the Public House Media Network.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats. Matt Coyne alongside Jake Holmes. Again, Friday edition of the Cheap Seats, talking, of course, Super Bowl. Been trying to talk about different parts of it this whole week. It's been pretty fun, I think, Jake, hearing the Monday and Wednesday show, just not actually about the game, just about stuff surrounding the game, which I think is pretty cool. And we'll give you our predictions here in our last segment, and then also we'll talk about how we did in the championship games, which were not good. But anyway, so Jake, some fun facts. I think I'm always like that nerd of fun facts and looking up different things. A lot of fun facts just from Super Bowl I itself. As a lot of people probably know, it wasn't the Super Bowl. I mean, it was just casually known as that. It was known as a world championship game. This is interesting that I never knew, Jake. It actually aired on two networks, NBC and CBS. And this is crazy, Jake. I don't know if you knew this. If you didn't, then both of us will go into Sunday being ready just to impress people. And Super Bowl, let me look this up. I looked it up. Okay, yeah, Super Bowl I. The second half kickoff. So what happened was CBS was ready. They got the opening kickoff, or the second half kickoff, but NBC missed it because they were in the process of doing an interview with Bob Hope. So NBC missed the second half kickoff. So Jake, do you know what they did? They re-kicked it. The kickoff was redone so that nearly half the people who were watching it could see it. Even worse, somebody like this article on Mental Floss that was joking that even worse that somebody had to break that news to the Packers coach Vince Lombardi. But isn't that crazy that they won't even redo a play that was clearly a penalty in the NFC Championship these days that even went to a judge? They redid the kickoff. Wow, that's just crazy to me.
Well done on the plug there, by the way,
Thank
Matt.
you.
Well done. I know you've been chomping at the bit for the last 2 weeks to get on that.
Thank you. Yes.
But yeah, that is interesting. I mean, thinking back, 53 years ago, we're talking about redoing kicks because one of the networks wasn't able to, capture it on air because they were in the midst of an interview. But also at the same time, what's interesting to me is that the game didn't even come close to selling out.
Yeah.
There were plenty of empty seats, and ironically enough, I believe Super Bowl I, I could be wrong, but I thought it was at the Coliseum.
I thought so too. Yeah, that's what
I could be
thought
wrong.
It was. I could be wrong.
Which is ironic that we're talking about this today with the Rams getting ready to play there. Not there, but with the Rams, that being their home stadium now. It's just funny to think that they weren't even coming close to selling out these games, and ultimately, to see just 53 years later what it has become, and even 5 years later what it became.
Yeah.
What the Super Bowl became after the AFL-NFL merger.
Yeah, and speaking with the AFL and NFL, the other thing, Super Bowl, I think it was just the first one. Yeah, it was just the first one. The rules were actually different. The AFL I think it was the AFL that had the 2-point conversion. Yeah, so they had the 2-point conversion, but what they did was during the Super Bowl, they didn't let them use it. So they played with no 2-point conversion. And then the other big thing is the AFL used a Spalding ball, which was a different shape than the Wilson. So they each used their brand of footballs for the game, which is an interesting thing that, again, it's just, I guess you have that change. You have two things coming together. But one of the things I think is really cool, and Jake, this is because this touches home, a little close for home for both of us. definitely you, but the original broadcast of the footage is currently like nobody really knows who owns it, and it was found by this guy in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Nah, Wilkes-Barre, let's go.
2005, this guy found it in the attic of his house. It was recorded by his father with 2-inch quadruplex tapes, and there was pieces missing, but the NFL tried to show it and just kind of failed in 2016. But interesting, Super Bowl one. Was there anything else that we missed? This is coming from mentalfloss.com, something that they put up. The halftime show featured 2 dudes in a jetpack, that's
pretty cool.
Which is interesting. So
I'd rather see that than Maroon 5, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
And speaking of this Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania situation here, how did I not know of this? In 2005, he was. He found a copy in his attic. Why was I not in that house?
Yeah.
I mean, that's right down the road from where I was at that 2005.
And
I would have been right down the road. That's why wasn't I in that house?
You think you would have at least heard something about it? I mean,
I would have had to.
That's big news.
I've never heard of that. I honestly have never heard of that scenario in my life.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's man. Now you're all upset. That could have been you.
Oh man!
All right, so some fun general stats for y'all as we've been some I've just heard before, some that I think are interesting. Like this is one of those ones, for you all, if they throw a ball into the stands or something like that, and someone's like, "Wonder how many footballs they use." You could say each team gets 108 footballs for this game, 54 for practice, 54 for the actual game. So. Jake, that is that perfect time, when someone's wondering, hey, how many footballs? And believe it or not, I've heard that question before. I wonder how many footballs they go through in a game. And the famous question is how many baseballs do they go in a baseball game, which is like 4,000. Every player gets a car for the week. They get to get their own car. Ticket, I mean, that's stupid. We know tickets in 67 cost $6 each. Here's one thing I didn't know, Jake. How much do you think the halftime performers get paid?
Oh, you know what? I think if I was to guess, just based on my knowledge in journalism and advertising and stuff like that, I would say that it's pretty low. And they get paid. They don't get paid much from the NFL. They get paid a lot from the sponsors. So they get a lot from commercials.
You are a smart man. They get paid nothing.
Yes.
And it comes from the exposure. Can just be just ridiculous. But I never knew they got paid nothing. Like that's crazy. But I mean, it makes sense.
Wait, they don't get paid a dime for doing that.
Nothing. Yeah. The halftime performers do not get paid. This is according to Reader's Digest.
Not even from like sponsorships or anything, or from advertisements or anything.
It says they don't get actual cash. The exposure can be worth tens of millions of dollars, and often the halftime show scores higher rating than the actual game.
Yeah, I mean that's fair enough. I mean Maroon 5. I mean Maroon 5's. Not that they need any exposure, but I mean they're just seeing them performing at the halftime show. Yeah, I think like Coldplay at Super Bowl 50, which why was Coldplay performing at Super Bowl 50? I'll never know.
Yeah.
But I believe that their like revenue spiked like big time after that halftime show. Like huge over the next like couple weeks, which I mean I guess that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, the most expensive commercial, going back to our first segment, was by Chrysler in 2011. I don't know when this article. Well, it's just last year, so it probably might be still the same. $12.4 million they spent on an ad that was obviously longer than the 30 seconds, which is interesting. So it's some fun things. It's anything for you, Jake, that you think maybe people don't know, or would you like me just to keep talking about this?
I was really interested by the fact that every player gets their own car for the week.
Yeah.
It's like they've got plenty. They've got plenty. You know what I mean? These guys got plenty.
Do they
of
really
cars.
need one? Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do they really need their own car for the week? I mean, bring your own. You know, but I mean, I guess being in a strange city, I mean, especially with New England, you know, being from, you know, let's say Boston as a city and LA, I guess that would be, you know, far to haul a car. So I guess I get it. But like, you know, talking about back 53 years ago, I thought that it's interesting. The average Super Bowl ticket right now is just an insane amount of money. You could get a Super Bowl ticket for $6 just back in the day.
Wow, that's crazy to think that. And that's one thing that, Jake, I think you and I need to make sure everybody understands. If you didn't know this fact, Jake, can you please let our listeners know who actually has the most Super Bowl championships in Super Bowl history?
Well, right now.
That's why I'm asking it now.
And it better be the same deal when we talk about it next week. The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, they do. They do have the most Super Bowls. So I don't want to hear anyone say that Tom Brady has 5 by himself. Just stop it. But yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully that, like you said, that still holds true. But speaking of Super Bowl, like Super Bowl champions, Super Bowl rings, of course, that's a big question. People always ask, how much are Super Bowl rings? The most expensive Super Bowl ring was $36,500 from the Patriots. Now I forget what year that was. 50. No. Was it? No. I forget what Super Bowl. Oh, no. Super Bowl. I'm sorry.
49?
Yeah, 49. Yes, I'm sorry. You're right. But in case you're wondering, you can actually buy a 2006 Indianapolis Colts Super Bowl ring for $80,000 currently on eBay, in case you're interested in that, Jake.
Jeez, $80,000. But you know what's funny is like you look at those Colts teams from 2006 Super Bowl the Super Bowl 41 champion. You know, that team was first of all, it was such a weird year. Rex Grossman led the Chicago Bears to an NFC championship. But that year was just so unique. I can only imagine, like, I guess I should phrase this the opposite way. Like these New England Patriot runs, you know, of like the early 2000s and, you know, these recent years where they've gone to what, 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls. You look at that, it's just so much more common for the Patriots to be there than it was for the 2006 Colts, you know?
Yeah.
So, you look at the price of Super Bowl rings and, I guess that would vary based on that.
Yeah, and the thing about this one, and I feel, it always interests me how they come up for sale, because, like, this ring is, I don't even remember the defensive tackle Monte Rieger. Do you remember that name?
I don't.
Yeah, so like it makes me think like this guy only has 1 Super Bowl ring most likely. Now it looks like he was yeah. So most likely only has 1, and it just like makes you think like, why'd you sell it? Like, are you in bad? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I always feel like that has to like when a player's ring goes up for sale that only has 1, I'm like, why? It's just, yeah. But it might just not be people's things. They just might not really care, about it, which would surprise me with how hard you work in your whole life as a football player to get there. But
yeah, what's funny is that you're right, because it's like Bob Sanders just taking the ring off his finger and just like throwing it on eBay. I just like you have 1, and I mean Bob Sanders. I mean I'm using Bob Sanders. I don't know who this Monte Reed or whatever his name. I don't know who he is. I'm using Bob Sanders as an example because he won 1 Super Bowl. Does Bob Sanders, who was one of the better safeties at that time, just not care about that Super Bowl? Yeah, does he not care about that win over the Chicago Bears? It's weird. I don't know.
Well, and the rings actually are cheaper than I thought. They say an average, depending obviously, is about $5,500, which is cheaper than I thought, which is insane.
Yeah.
But of course they have they call them level Bs, level Cs, where like front office will get them, and like some teams. And I didn't know this, Jake, in the process of all this, that they give 150 rings to the team. The NFL pays for 150, and if they want more, they have to pay for them, which I never knew that. I thought that was an interesting little tidbit. But Jake, let's before we close out here on this segment, getting into our predictions, I was thinking if you wanted to, I thought people would like to know how much tickets are going right now on StubHub. Jake, if you want, we could actually go and sit in the upper corner, section 346. There are 2 tickets available for $2,367.86 each, if you're interested.
I'm completely in.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm completely in.
Now,
Matt. Let's get it.
Before you decide, there's also Suite C, Seat 2, 1 ticket for $310,000.
Oh.
So there's only 1 seat. So like if you want, like we could go and rotate or something like that. There's also a lower club midfield at $27,000. What I'm getting at, this $310,000, someone's just being stupid. They're just like, yeah, it's down on the field, but they're just being dumb. These other ones, Jake, like, I know there are millionaires. I know there's billionaires. I know there's people who $27,000 is nothing. But 27, like, for a ticket for a game, don't get me wrong, I understand it's the Super Bowl, but for a ticket, I struggled when I took my dad to the game 4 of the NLCS when the Pirates were playing the Cardinals. I had trouble spending like $150 a ticket.
Yeah. I absolutely. Oh, trust me, I know exactly what you mean. With the playoffs, and so similarly, my buddy and I went to Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final a couple years ago, 2017. They played the Nashville Predators. The Penguins played the Nashville Predators. We were in a folding chair at the very top.
Really?
Of PPG Paints Arena. We were looking actually, Matt, I got to tell you, they're the best seats I've ever freaking had. I'm not kidding. You could see plays develop. It was unbelievable.
That's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, we were in a folding chair. They brought out extra chairs. We were in a folding chair, $250, and we were struggling. My credit score went down because I might have missed a student loan payment, But yeah, we struggled with those,
Yeah.
$27,000. I'm gonna have to ask the boss for commission, man. I guess that's what I'm gonna have to do.
Yeah, if your team was in it, if you were a Rams fan and you were a millionaire, okay, I get it. But you pay all this money, and that's like my biggest thing. Like for me, spending $150 a ticket for that game, and they lost. Now it was to have that time with my dad that we grew up very big baseball fans. To have that time with him, it was more than worth it. But I looked at him when we were done. I went, "Well, that was fun. We just spent $300 to watch the Pirates lose." We got to see Alvarez hit one long ball, but that was about it. But yeah, that just amazes me. But the good thing is we're poor and we don't have to worry about going, and we'll watch it from our seats and eat some food and impress everyone with the stats that we have just shared with everyone. That will be the best part of it. So, all right. So I think we've bored everybody out enough with stats, but I hope people took some notes, Jake. I think they'll have some impressed friends. But when we come back, Jake and I are going to really impress you with our predictions because we know they're going to be right on. Stay with Jake and Matt here in the Cheap Seats. We'll be right back.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
How's it going, everybody? This is Keith. and Katie, host of Coffee with Keith and Katie, here on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. When you're done here, I hope you'll check out our show, Coffee with Keith and Katie,
where we talk about our lives and relationship over a cup of coffee.
A new episode airs on Facebook Live every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie.
Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
And welcome back to the Cheap Seats. Again, Matt Coyne alongside Jake Holmes. Well, Jake, it's that time. I mean, we've talked about the important commercials. We've talked about the fun facts. The other, Monday and Wednesday shows talk to you about what to eat, what not to eat. Talk to you about. Wow, just completely drew a blank on Wednesday's show. They talked about betting, talked about halftime show, and now it's time, Jake, to get our predictions. It's going to be a pretty simple question for our poll question. It's just going to be simply, who do you think is going to win, the Rams or the Patriots? I think we can't really go outside of that, Jake. I don't know about you. I feel like that has to be the question for this week. So, Jake, 2 weeks ago, you and I, you did okay. You were 1-1. You picked New Orleans and New England, and New England won. New Orleans didn't. I won't talk about that. I'm not even a New Orleans fan. I just don't understand. I finished a fantastic 0-2 on the day, picking Kansas City and New Orleans. So that was fun. Jake, I have never been so upset over games that I really didn't care who won. Well, I did care who won, but it wasn't the Steelers. So this weekend, of course, we have New England and LA. Jake, do we do anything fun with this, or do we just pick it straight up? Do you think do we go a little bit more in depth? Do we do a few prop bets between me and you? I mean, do you want to do score? Do we want to do MVP? Do we want to do halftime score? Do we want to do some other just fun prop bets between you and me?
I think what we should I'm definitely down with score, winner, of course who wins, the score and MVP. If there's anything else that you want, let's throw it in.
Okay. All right, so we'll start with a couple prop bets. I think that would be fun. So we can do kind of a best out of 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll save our predictions that mean something for the end. So, Jake, let's start with this. How many times will they show Tom Brady's face? I'm joking. The opening coin toss will be heads or tails.
I'm going to say tails. It never fails.
Dang it! That was...
Yeah.
I was going to say tails. It never fails. That's a saying. All right,
we agree on everything.
I'll go heads, though, because we have to disagree on that. So one of us has to win that one. Jake, let's do this is a good one. Which team scores first? I'll go first with this one. I'm going to say Patriots score first.
Okay, I'm going to disagree. I think the Rams are going to get the ball to start, and Zerline's going to hit a field goal with about 5 minutes in. They're going to have a decent first drive. The Rams are going to get out to a 3-0 lead early.
Okay, so we're 2 for 2 on disagreements. Okay, so we're 2 in. If you think of one, Jake, our listeners are probably like, why did they come up with this? Because this is fun. We're fun to do it, coming up with it right now. So you say tails, I say heads. First team to score, you say Rams, I say Patriots. Let's go. We talked about commercials today, Jake. Let's do this. The first one of it, we're gonna have to remember this. We'll both forget. The first commercial break. The first commercial. So after the game starts, I'm talking about. So the kickoff happens in the first commercial break. What kind of commercial will the very first commercial of Super Bowl 51 or 53 be?
Okay, so are you talking about, recently a lot of them have been depressing. Are you talking funny or depressing, or are you talking about, insurance versus beer?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to say it's going to be a nationwide commercial. We'll take this, you could say movie, insurance, beer, whatever you want to say.
I don't know why, but a car commercial is popping out to me. I think it's going to be a Lincoln commercial, something like that. Yeah,
I'm going to put Lincoln because if it is that's impressive.
I don't know what I'll do if it's a Lincoln.
I'm going out. I really want to say I'm going to say a beverage.